I'm calling today's special session to order. Today is May 12th, and this is a continuation of our meeting on last Thursday. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sorry, Councilmember Rollo.
Here.
Councilmember Boland.
Here.
Councilmember Rosenberger.
Here.
Councilmember Scamilleri.
Here.
Councilmember Sims.
Here.
Councilmember Flaherty.
Here.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Before we get started, we'll do an agenda summation. And first second after that is conduct of deliberations. And I just want to remember council members that the conduct of deliberations that we agreed upon is that public comments would be limited to 3 minutes each. Council member debate will be limited to 3 minutes each. And if this meeting is still in process at 11 p.m., we will entertain a recess to schedule continuation of the special session. Should we get finished with all of our business, then we will adjourn, and tomorrow's special session, if we don't need it, will be canceled. Going on through the agenda, we will continue with ordinance 21-23 this evening. Ordinance 21-23 to amend Title 20 of the Unified Development Ordinance of the Bloomington Municipal Code regarding regulations related to dwelling duplex, dwelling triplex, and dwelling fourplex set forth in Bloomington Municipal Code 20.03 and 20.04. Then we'll move on to ordinance 21-24 to repeal and replace the official zoning map within the Title 20 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled United Development Ordinance. Then we'll discuss matters dealing with council schedule. And then, as mentioned earlier, we will either recess or adjourn. I would, as another reminder, from our previous proceedings on ordinance 21-23, we had amendment 1 and it failed 4-5. Amendment 2 passed 9-0, and amendment 3 passed 7-2. And I do believe that we are prepared to move forward with amendment 4.
Mr. President, I move amendment number 4 to ordinance 21-23.
I'm sorry, before we do that, I have a question from our parliamentarian, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Actually, before we get to amendment 4, I wanted to move that the regular session scheduled for August 4th, 2021 begin at 3:00 p.m.
Second.
So I can
go ahead. Yes, please do.
I'd be happy to explain if it's okay with the president.
Yes.
So as a lot of folks are aware and council members are aware, the city is resuming the annexation process that was terminated in 2017 through action of the General Assembly at the Indiana State House. And we are scheduled to hear legislation next Wednesday, May 19th, on amended fiscal plans for each of the areas for potential annexation. In a public hearing as part of the process on the annexation ordinances will be held via Zoom on August 4th, 2021 at our regular session, anticipating that there may be a number of members of the public who would wish to comment at that public meeting, and planning ahead to notice the meeting properly. We thought, or council staff suggested that we make a motion at this meeting tonight to clarify that we will begin that regular session on August 4th earlier to allow adequate time to hear all interested members of the public.
Sorry, I got to unmute myself. Thank you. Is it proper to ask for any questions from council or move to roll call?
The amendment is debatable and amendable if other members had questions or concerns, yes.
Do we have any comments on that Motion. Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Councilmember Scambolery,
Yes.
Councilmember Sims,
Yes.
Councilmember Flaherty,
Yes.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg,
Yes.
and Councilmember Rollo.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That motion is passed 9-0. Thank you, Councilmember Flaherty. I was so sorry to disturb you. Councilmember Rollo, you may now proceed.
I move amendment number 4 to ordinance 2123.
Second.
Thank you. It's Amendment 4 to Ordinance 21-23. It's been moved and seconded. Would you care to present? You or Councilmember Sandberg?
Yes, thank you very much. Along with Councilmember Rollo, I am pleased to sponsor Amendment 4, which attempts to leverage one of the tools in the city's toolbox to offer voluntary participation in the Affordable Housing Incentive Program to bring more affordable rental rates in duplexes that will develop in R1, 2, and 3. As we know, or as we all should be aware of by now, the city does not have the legal authority to enact legislation related to rates charged for housing in Bloomington. Inclusionary zoning law is prohibited by the Indiana General Assembly. We do, however, have leverage power through voluntary means by offering bonus incentives for affordability. This is what Amendment 4 does. It offers the developers of a duplex the option to increase density to the maximum allowed of 3 bedrooms per duplex unit if they voluntarily offer less than market rates for those units. If that does not fit their market plan for making a profit, they are free to develop a duplex at a slightly smaller scale of 2 bedrooms per duplex unit and charge what they want at market rates. In prime locations, such as near the downtown and IU, market rates will be a factor in the cost of these emerging duplexes. Market rents will not achieve the intended goal of mixing incomes and advancing equity in these desirable neighborhoods without public sector intervention. We have this tool. Why not use it? Amendment 4 changes the number of bedrooms allowed in a duplex from a total of 6, 3 in each unit, to 4, 2 in each unit. Amendment 4 adds a 3rd tier of projects that would qualify for incentives under the Affordable Housing Incentive section and adds a 3rd tier of affordable housing incentives. For projects where both units in a duplex are income restricted permanently to below 120% of the HUD AMI for Monroe County, or for projects where one unit in a duplex is income restricted permanently to below 80% of the HUD AMI for Monroe County, the number of bedrooms per unit may be increased to 3 in each unit, 6 total. Former Mayor Tommy Allison is an outspoken advocate for responsible housing development and affordability and has commented several times in these UDO revision meetings. One of her last emails to council was especially impactful, and I'd like to share it with you all, and I quote, "The market is what it is, driven by profit, and the real estate market is driven by location, location, location. At present, our hot market locations are the core neighborhoods close to IU. And like all college towns, we are targeted by outside money with no interest in serving the middle market. How then can you protect our local rental and owner market? The answer is simple. Use with clear purpose what leverage you have. If you want affordable rents, use the number of bedrooms allowed to incentivize affordable rents. Tighten and make specific tangible requirements such as parking that must be met for conditional use. Recognize that in a national, expensive, scarce housing market, an unfettered market will produce market rate housing and rentals. To get the type of housing where Bloomington wants it, in addition to incentivizing developers to provide affordable and middle income housing, the city will have to enter the market as a developer using city-owned land and public monies. The power is there. Be creative. focus the American Rescue Plan Act monies on housing, as Councilman Ron Smith suggests. Tommy Allison. The power is there. Be creative. What better words for us to consider in making the UDO as good as it can possibly be and in achieving our shared goal of increasing our affordable housing stock to suit a mix of incomes. Amendment 4 will help to get us there, a small step, but one we can leverage for the public good. Councilmember Rollo will wrap up with citations from the comprehensive plan that support Amendment 4.
Thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. The comprehensive plan directs us to consider and include tools in zoning and development review to increase affordability of housing in the community. And here are some that are cited for our consideration and in support of Amendment 4. Under the heading of future projections, found on page 21, it will be important for Bloomington to provide opportunities and locations for a growing student housing demand while ensuring there is a full mix of housing choices and price points for the balance of Bloomington households. Under the heading Economic Development, page 32, develop an affordable workforce housing program as a means to retain and attract employees to live and work in Bloomington. Under the heading of Housing Trends and Issues, page 61, building a growing stock of affordable housing requires assuring sustainability so unaffordable stock is not the only option for future generations. Mixed income neighborhoods are fundamental to successful sustained affordable housing stock. In goal 5.1, housing affordability, page 63, it states, improve access to affordable housing for a continuum of needs in Bloomington, including people experiencing homelessness, low income and moderate income households, strive for permanent affordability in rental and owner-occupied housing options. In policy 5.1.2, it states, establish affordable housing in locations with close proximity to schools, employment centers, transit, recreational opportunities, and other community resources to increase access. Page 65, programs affordable housing. To the extent permitted by law, develop and implement programs that require and or incentivize affordable housing within new developments, with rezones, and with changes to development standards through land development activities. There are numerous other examples in the comprehensive plan, so I've just cited some in support of Amendment 4. And I believe that will conclude our introduction. Is that true, Councilmember Sandberg?
Yes, it is. I just do want to iterate that this only pertains to R1, R2, and R3. I think a previous copy of our amendment did not make that clear. So we want to make that clear.
So we will be available for questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from council colleagues of the authors of this amendment? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I would like to hear from the planning and transportation staff, if we may.
Okay, I see Mr. Robinson is on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sims. Scott Robinson, Director of Planning and Transportation. I first want to thank Councilmember Sandberg and Rollo for introducing this amendment. I certainly appreciate the idea and the creativity to offer an incentive for affordable housing. As everyone knows, this is a very important issue facing Bloomington. And the UDO does have voluntary incentives. There are other examples of affordable housing tools throughout the country to consider. The administration is fully committed to support these tools, especially outside the UDO. That includes the $450,000 Recover Forward Mortgage Assistance Program through HAND, the reuse of the core administration building on the hospital site, or to explore opportunities with low-income housing tax credit through developers, land banking, land trusts, and yes, using the federal stimulus funds that support affordable housing and home ownership. Given the context of this amendment only, and these UDO proceedings, I don't think this is the venue to debate and discuss the wide array of affordable housing tools to consider. Looking at the merits of this amendment only, staff does not support the amendment. Here is why. The UDO's affordable housing standards are based on incentives where a maximum of 85% of the units are market rate and a minimum of 15% of the units are permanently affordable units. The trade-off here with the incentive provides a means to increase the total number of units through height or reduce lot size and setbacks in exchange for long-term affordability. The theory being market rate units subsidize the affordable units. I'm cautiously optimistic our incentives have established the right criteria, but at this Monday's Plan Commission meeting, Trinitas vendors introduced their redevelopment proposal for the Kmart site. It has proposed 340 units, 906 bedrooms at this time. They have not considered either the affordable housing incentives nor the sustainable development incentives. This amendment has the ratio structured at 50% or 100% of the units being affordable. The nature of the duplex does not offer enough units or bedrooms to provide any real incentive to leverage affordable units or bedrooms. Theoretically, Amendment 3 that was just passed created a cap and buffer. In theory, if this was such a good idea, it seems to me that the cap and buffer may hinder future affordable units. Our experience with low-income housing tax credit projects, the request for information for the core administration building, the Bloomington Housing Authority, and other housing assistance programs through HAND clearly indicate there must be an incentive, and in some instances, much more than the UDO may offer to leverage affordable housing. These incentives are outside the UDO. I asked Clarion Associates, the consultant who assisted us with the UDO update, to review this amendment. They provided feedback, and they said that this amendment will do less to promote both the variety of housing, which is the intent of the duplex amendment, and to create affordable units. I think, again, through this process, there's been a negotiated compromise to reach a duplex amendment as a tool that will slowly broaden Bloomington's housing variety. But again, at this time, I don't think that this offers any incentive for affordability, and staff does not support this amendment. I would like to give Ms. Scanlon an opportunity to add any additional comments, if I may, but thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Robinson. Yeah, I'll just reiterate, Planning and Transportation Department is opposed to Amendment 4. As we've said many times now, the purpose of adding the options of plexes is just that, to add more housing type options for people living in Bloomington. This amendment was written under the assumption, whether intentional or not, that the duplex units will be rentals, because this type of permanent affordability policy alone cannot be effectively applied to home ownership. We don't want these units to be limited to the rental option only. The amendment ignores a large swath of the population who's looking for missing middle housing and might need more than 2 bedrooms. The amendment excludes many families with children. The amendment completely removes the option of home ownership of 3-bedroom duplexes for families that make more than 120% of the area median income and need more than 2 bedrooms. It also effectively removes home ownership for those who can meet the AMI requirements, because permanent affordability at this scale restricts future sales and the ability of the inhabitants to generate equity, which is a large part of why people invest in homeownership in the first place. Investing in half a duplex whose sales price is permanently restricted by a zoning code doesn't make sense. Even if it did, we'd be telling someone who barely makes or is below our area median income that sure, they can buy property in our neighborhoods, but they can't gain the equity that their neighbors can. Permanent affordability with no companion programming won't be used for home ownership. It will be used for rentals, if anything at all. This is similar, as Director Robinson said, to the model that we use for much larger scale rental developments. Will some of these duplexes end up being rentals, whether they are affordable or not? Yes. We also need to leave them open for the option of home ownership at all scales. The amendment also obviously limits the ability to remodel any of our existing units that have 2 bedrooms or more on each side. Echoing Director Robinson, Council has already voted to include a spacing requirement It also has a time-based requirement, and they have included an annual cap of 15. There's also dimensional and utility restrictions in the use-specific standards. You also have to meet with your neighborhood association and go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for approval. There are 12,430 parcels in the proposed R1, R2, and R3 zoning districts. There is a maximum of 15 duplex approvals a year allowed under the current draft. That's 0.1% of the parcels in these districts that could add 1 unit over what people typically think of as this area, which is single family. If the point of this amendment is to add additional regulations, we don't need it. The regulations that we have are the definition of incremental, which Merriam-Webster defines as of relating to, being, or occurring in especially small increments. If the point of this amendment is to increase the availability of affordable housing, it isn't going to do that either. All this amendment does, whether intentional or not, is further limit the likelihood that duplexes won't be built. And because of that, the Planning and Transportation Department does oppose the amendment. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I didn't catch her in time, so that was Ms. Jacqueline Scanlon of Planning and Transportation. I didn't get a chance to ask her to identify herself at the beginning. So thank you. Okay, moving back to council. Do we have any questions for the authors of this amendment and or staff? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I would like to ask the sponsors how they envision this applying to owner occupied units, or whether they envision this applying.
Well, yes, we did. I mean, an owner who wishes to convert their home into a duplex would have the option to take advantage of the affordability incentive if they so wished.
But how would they guarantee that in perpetuity? I just don't understand how that would work, and who would track that in perpetuity they would have to rent the other unit or sell the other unit. What if they wanted to sell the other half of their duplex?
Then if this amendment passes, of course, that would be moved on to the next purchaser of the duplex. Until, and of course, the language says, until this council decides to make a change here. As we're approaching much of what we're doing here with respect to adding duplexes into the core, I think we're all looking at this as a bit of an experiment. We're not 100% sure how this is all going to work out. We just felt that having an option to bring in lower than market rates for duplexes would be an advantage, would be a benefit to both.
Also,
oh, I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
well, I just want to remind council and the public that one has the ability to plex or subdivide your home, and it's called an ADU. And that applies to owner occupancy. So that option already exists.
That is, the size of the ADU is limited, but yeah, okay.
And then it would need to be deeded as 2 separate properties to sell as 2 owner occupied units is what we have been informed by people that we have been consulting with about some of the questions that we anticipate about, how various considerations will be met here.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Piedmont Smith. Any further questions from council?
I have one.
Well, Councilmember Boland and then Councilmember Smith. And Councilmember Smith, I will remind you, I can't see you. So you'll be after Councilmember Boland.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to ask about the sponsors. Have either of you consulted with anyone who's ever built a house or a duplex in Bloomington when creating this amendment?
Yes, we have, and we're hoping that many of them are on the call here today and will also be able to participate in answering some of these questions. With respect to, many of them feel that this actually does allow for a profit to be made. We're not attempting to, with this proposal, to limit anyone's ability to earn income off of converting their own home into a duplex or purchasing a home for the purpose of converting it to a duplex. We feel that this formula with the 120% and the 80% does allow options for profits to be made on the rental of their duplex.
Speaking of which, just to be clear, Councilmember Rallo, you said that I'm not sure which of you it was who said that this provides an option, but I mean, if this amendment passes, wouldn't it require, no, sorry, it would be 2 bedrooms unless they, okay, I follow that. Have either of you read the letter from Dave Harstad that was circulated this afternoon?
Yes, we have. And we actually have another worked up pro forma from how this particular amendment actually could be profitable for someone converting a home into a duplex. We have Jan Sorby on the line here tonight who could speak to that. We also have Carrie Thompson on the line who can speak to probably questions that you may have better than I can, certainly. But yes, we have been consulting with a lot of people about the validity of this amendment. And I think we feel that what Dave Harstad brought forward, that was building from new, right? That was not a conversion of a home. And so there are some significant differences, particularly in the R1, R2, R3 zone, that we think we can bring people forward in tonight's public comment that can bear witness to the fact that people can indeed still make income from converting their own homes into a duplex.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, President Sims. I was just going to ask if the sponsors want to respond to Ms. Scanlon and Mr. Robinson's analysis.
Well, certainly we respect their opposition to this. They've certainly provided a lot of information that we'll all take into consideration as tonight's debate continues. But once again, this is not a new program. This is a program that we already have, the housing incentive program that has worked for larger apartment complexes. We just, in the spirit of being creative, we think it's time to try to use this tool for getting more leverage for affordable housing in the core neighborhoods. And so with respect to everything that they brought forward, we would just like to counter with the opportunity to have a public discussion on why not use tools at our availability to do our level best to bring the rents down in some of these newer forms of housing that we have now approved.
Thank you.
I'll just add that the city places a great deal of emphasis on workforce housing, and this is the design of the amendment. You know, I mean, people think of affordable as Section 8. This is not. This is affordable for workforce, and so this is why the profit possibility is still there. So we disagree with staff regarding that, and we also want to emphasize that this is one tool. This is not an exclusive means. The comprehensive plan directs us to use all available tools, and this is one. They mentioned others, and we're not opposed to those, but this is one way to create affordable housing in our view. Thanks.
And again, with respect to us taking a look at this in 6 months and reviewing the previous amendment that we passed that had to do with caps and spatial requirements, we can certainly use this as an opportunity to gather more data. If this serves as a disincentive, or if this is certainly not a disincentive, well, then we will know that over time and we can come back and make adjustments. But we, in the spirit of truly providing a range of incomes who can afford to rent in these very desirable areas, we thought it was worth taking the chance that all of you would consider both the pros and the cons and decide this might be a good thing to try. We already have this program in place. We're not inventing a new program to provide incentives to bring those rates down to be workforce housing. We're not talking about a great difference in perhaps what they could charge at the market rate, but enough that this might be an appealing option for people of workforce income, workforce means.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Flaherty.
Sure. Following up on the reasoning expressed by the sponsors that we already have this program in place and they think it makes sense to apply it to a much smaller scale than what the program allows currently. Would the amendment sponsors support a change to the UDO to set a 2-bedroom maximum for all detached single-family homes with the option to have more than 2 bedrooms for a detached single-family home, only if you restrict any rental or future sale in perpetuity to an affordability level of 120% AMI?
No, I don't believe I would support that. I think detached single-family homes are a completely different entity that is a valuable housing stock in a community that has 66% of rental properties. I don't think that's the same thing to apply duplex standards to single-family homes, which are a desirable housing stock for a lot of individuals who want to own homes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Scambolari.
May I direct a question to Ms. Scanlon or Mr. Robinson, either one? In one of our former meetings on this subject, you talked about owners of rental properties in Bloomington, and you shared a percentage of rentals that are owned by those who have local Bloomington mailing addresses and live here. And you differentiate. What was that percentage again?
I believe it was about 67. Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The number was that was total, and then the number of that was total, and then the ones that owned between 1 and 5 was slightly lower. I'll have to pull that out.
So among all rental properties, 67% of the landlords, the owners, live in Bloomington?
No. So among rental properties in these 3 zoning districts, for the addresses listed for the rental properties, a certain percentage, roughly 67, I believe, are owned by people whose owner address is Bloomington. And then I believe it was somewhere around 50% are people who own between 1 and 5 units. So small scale local owners.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Scambolari. Do we have any other first round questions? Okay, seeing none. I'll ask a question, then we'll get into the second round. I think what I just heard was one of the sponsors say that this would be more leverage for affordable housing in the core neighborhoods. And I also thought I heard that this is not for Section 8. And I'm not so sure what that means. Does that mean that's not for some of the lowest level affordable incomes? And is that a disincentivized method for them?
Well, President Sims, in researching the options that we might have to leverage more affordability in duplexes, this is the topic that we're talking about. I understand from our legal department that Section 8, I asked, could we have something in the UDO that would say, if you're going to do a duplex, would you at least make one or other side available as a Section 8? That is part of what is prevented by the Indiana General Assembly. That is a no-can-do with respect to inclusionary zoning. I inquired about Section 8. So this was our attempt using the 120% AMI and the 80% AMI, 120 being more considered workforce, 80 a little bit better for people of moderate incomes. Of lower moderate incomes, that Section 8 could not even be brought into this equation by Indiana law.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question, if I may. I think us here on the council and everyone's pretty much aware of the other tools that were mentioned to reach affordable housing. or more affordable housing in order to promote and increase more so. And we've utilized a lot of those other tools and have plans to use them in the future. My understanding of this UDO legislation was about zoning, not and as far as hopefully to increase our housing inventory. I don't recall that it was ever the intent or how we got into that this was legislation for affordable housing. But hopefully to increase the housing stock could help hopefully work its way to depressing the housing market cost. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it was brought forward in the beginning in some of the early discussions on the UDO that allowing duplexes in core neighborhoods would actually contribute to affordability. Then as time went on and that assumption was challenged, I think it became less about affordability and it moved into other things like environmental considerations and increasing housing stock just in general with the hope that that would drive costs down at some future point. So I think there is some public confusion about what this is really intended to do with the increased density in already dense and already diversified core neighborhoods. And so this was just Councilmember Rallo's and my earnest attempt to, because we are very much in favor of every single tool in our toolbox to create and leverage affordability. It's essential. I think we have more of an affordability crisis in this community than we actually do a housing crisis that many people have talked about here. So this is an earnest attempt to use a tool in our toolbox to do everything we possibly can to maybe allow a better mix of incomes that would be able to afford to live in and to rent duplexes in R1, R2, and R3.
Thank you. Seeing no more first round questions, moving to second round, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Sandberg stressed that this is not new, that we already have affordability incentives in the UDO to apply to other cases. But I wanted to mention a couple of ways in which this is very different and just get some feedback from the sponsors on that. First of all, these incentives could include owner-occupied property and not just rental property, which the other incentives are just about rental units. And then the other is something that Mr. Robinson mentioned, that in the case of the other incentives, it's 15% of units expected to be on the affordable scale, whereas here we're asking for 50% or even 100% of the 2 units. So in that respect, I see this as very different. Could you address those 2 differences and how you would react to that, please?
Well, clearly it is very different. I mean, it is a huge difference in scale from a large multiplex apartment building to what we're attempting to do here as a novel entrance into core neighborhoods, adding the ability to convert your home, or for someone else, an outside investor, to take a single family home and convert it to a duplex for whatever purposes. Mostly we anticipate they will be rental properties. So of course there's a difference in scale, and it's interesting that we're using Trinitas as the example. I was there in the meeting on Monday and heard very clearly when I asked the petitioner why there was no longer any affordability component to the project. And of course, things have changed in the 3 years since this project has first been placed on the table for consideration. And in large part, it is our change in our UDO. And they have decided that by right, this is not a PUD, by right, they can build what they want to build and they don't have to take advantage of that affordability incentive. And, when I heard that, my heart kind of fell a little bit, because this is kind of what happens in my mind when you deregulate. when you kind of remove the tools that you have to do anything toward affordability. And we all know what a heavy lift that is. And for them now to say, well, we don't have to, because we can do the project we want to do. We can do it by right. We really don't need to add an additional floor on that multifamily, because we just don't want that incentive. It's not worth it to us. And I think these are some of the problems that we're trying to overcome here by just asserting ourselves in the public sector to say, we do have the tool, we do have the power to incentivize this. And if you want to do a 2-and-2 duplex, you can, and charge whatever market rate you want. All we're doing is adding that additional bedroom as an incentive to at least try to bring the rents down to 120 AMI or 80% AMI. And of course, it's a much smaller scale. There's no comparison there, no doubt about it. But I don't see it's all that different that the hand department couldn't use the formula that they already have in their incentive program for larger projects to adapt it to this use and get what we want more of in Bloomington, and that is affordable rents.
May I ask a quick follow-up?
Yes, you may.
So since Hand has no experience with tracking owner-occupied affordability, have you reached out to Hand to see how they might administer this for owner-occupied units?
I did reach out to John Zodi as we were looking into, all the pros and cons and working through some of this. He was tied up and was not able to get back with me personally, but he did send an email. So I know that they have also staffed this with the planning and transportation staff, with Mr. Robinson and Ms. Scanlon. They may have some concerns about how to adapt this. But I think basically it is our responsibility on this council as the elected body to at least explore the possibilities and ask them to adapt their current formula for doing the workforce housing incentive program with the larger multi with this particular element. I think it's something I would expect staff to be willing to do if this is the will of this council to move this amendment forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Piedmont Smith. Councilmember Boland.
Yes, thank you. So the Trinitas project, had it been required to add affordable housing at 15%, would have translated to roughly 52 units or 136 affordable bedrooms they would have had to build. How many units or bedrooms do you imagine will be built as a result of Amendment 4?
Well, again, no one has any idea to know at this point. As we have been discussing all along, this is brand new, right? We need to do more data collection. We need to see what this is going to trend for or against. Time will tell.
Okay, well, how do you feel about the data collected so far on the experiment that is the ADU? We passed that 4 years ago. Do you think that enough have been built, too many have been built, not enough have been built? What do you think?
We encourage the additions of ADUs. We think that's the best way to increase density in R1, R2, and R3. In terms of that information, yes, we track that. We will continue to track that and encourage that as a way for homeowners to add some additional income to their mix.
Okay, but I mean, what I'm trying to get at is, do you think that the result from the ordinance we passed resulted in adequate numbers for ADUs?
I think some will say not. And one of the things we may examine as we do the research into what is the profitability of ADUs? Is it just too expensive to add? Why are people not taking advantage of that? I think that's a very good question. I do not have the answer to that, Councilmember Volan, but I would expect that over time, we will all track these trends, and it will then inform our decisions going forward as, do we need more regulations or do we need fewer regulations if this is the kind of housing that we want to incentivize?
If I can just follow up with staff,
Could I add something, Councilmember Volin? Just that you're right. We had the expectation that Trinitas would add affordable housing. They will not. And so this will add more affordable housing than Trinitas, which is 0. So this is actually a means to do it. How it will manifest, we'll have to see. You know, this is an experiment in progress, I guess, but guaranteed it'll be more than Trinitas.
Well, that's obvious, but the point is that, you know, we're only getting volume of affordable housing from the largest multifamily projects. And a single project is going to build more than Amendment 3 would allow. You know, we have had experience in the past with large multifamily projects that have built or donated money to provide substantially more housing than Amendment 3 allows. So my follow-up question to staff is, if I have it correctly, ADUs were originally limited to 30 units, and that as of 2021, 20 units have been approved or built. Is that correct?
No, you guys didn't end up putting a cap in. That was discussed. We did the 300-foot separation at first with conditional use approval. Then in the 1920 update, it was changed to by right. And then last month.
What do we mean the 1920 update?
I know, sorry. No, 2019, 2020. That's
okay, thank you.
Sorry. I did that earlier today. It was changed to by right, and then recently, you know, the notice requirement was removed. So originally it was just conditional with the separation. And yes, we are at 20 that have been applied for.
Roughly, we're building 5 ADUs a year, or approving 5 ADUs a year.
And yes, so yes, but in actuality, it's less at the beginning and more now.
In the most recent year, how many ADUs were approved or built?
Approved last year, I want to say 6, but I'm not positive.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilmember Bowman. Councilmember Scambolery.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your patience with my questions on this. So just so I can picture this, let's say I own a 3-bedroom home in some neighborhood, and my elderly parents want to move in and I want to plex my house. All right, the affordability incentives are not particularly important to me. I just want my elderly parents to have a unit attached to my home. I have a 3-bedroom house. I want to plex it. How many units can be in that new bedroom? Or how many bedrooms can be in the new unit?
I'm sorry, are you talking to staff or were you talking to me or them?
I'll take either one. Let's start with staff, but if this amendment passes.
Sure, if this amendment passes, you will not be able to plex your property because your unit has 3 bedrooms. So assuming that you live in the R1, R2, and R3, unless you're going to put one or both of your units in permanent affordability, neither of them can have 3 bedrooms.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Further questions from council members? Okay, seeing none. Councilmember Piedmont Smith, sorry.
That's a last minute question. So I wanted to ask the sponsors, do you find it problematic that lower income owner occupants in this scenario would not be able to build equity through home ownership?
And now you are asking the question that a lower income person owns a home and is wanting to convert it into a duplex, or someone is wanting to purchase a duplex? I'm not real clear on what your question is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, if there is a duplex available either through somebody creating one or building new, and they, in order to get the 3 bedrooms on one or both sides of the duplex, the unit that is for sale is limited in it must be maintained as affordable in perpetuity. And then a family buys that and they cannot build equity because they cannot sell later at market rate.
Right. Would like to leave this question up, and I really wish we could have had Carrie Thompson be a part of our presentation because I think she can speak to this probably better than anyone. She does have some clear opinions about permanent affordability and how that is an impairment for people who want to buy a home and want to have equity in that home. And so that is a very legitimate concern. If I could just briefly go back to Ms. Gambaleuri's question too, about the 3-bedroom and wanting to make room for an elderly parent, that would be an ADU. So again, we do have options here for individuals. And in the case of kind of these exceptions to the rules, you know, I would be flexible enough to grant conditional variances on things that don't quite fit neatly into this particular amendment. I think that's what the BZA is all about. Or are certainly making tweaks along the way if we see that some of this becomes problematic for specific, maybe kind of unusual requests. But yeah, I hope that Carrie Thompson will be able to address your question about the whole, equity issue.
May I respond to Councilperson Piedmont Smith? We researched this question as well with the current affordable housing staff that work in the community. Would that be okay? Okay.
Yes, please.
So for example, the model of Habitat, and I'm sure Ms. Thompson will correct me if I misrepresent this, is a limited number of years that the mortgage agreement is good for. So they sell a property to a family, they obviously put in sweat equity, and then if the family goes to sell that property, in most cases, Habitat buys it back from them so that they can sell it at market and make equity on the home. Then Habitat sells it to another family at a limited rate. So obviously in this situation, if we require permanent affordability, that model that they use, they won't be able to do it. So they won't be able to build any duplexes in these districts where they do obviously sometimes build housing. There are options for permanent affordability, as I mentioned in my little introduction. For example, shared equity models related to land trust, but that's not what this is. So this will not get at those. Additionally, just to add, we can't grant variances just when we think a situation or a person's personal characteristics of what's going on at their house is okay. It could be an ADU, as Councilperson Scamballeri asked. You could do an ADU. Obviously, then your mother would lose the opportunity to continue to gain equity because you can't own an ADU. Only the person owning the main property can continue to generate equity in an ADU situation. So that is one of the advantages, obviously, to duplexing, as well as the fact that ADUs are size limited, and that may not work with whatever building that you have to work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions from council? Okay, seeing none, it will go to public comment. I do want to remind all those who will speak in the public that you will be limited to 3 minutes. Please indicate your intent to speak publicly by using the raised hand function in Zoom. You may also send a message through chat to our meeting host requesting to be allowed to make public comment should you not be able to do so through your device. Also, if there's more than one person on any given device, we'd appreciate if you would share that with us so that we're aware of it and have an opportunity to give everyone a chance to speak publicly. And I think that's all. Ms. Lacy, who do you have?
One final thing, I will keep time, and when the speaker has 1 minute remaining, I'll put my hand up like a stop sign, and when time expires, I will do the timeout sign. Our first speaker is the person with the screen name Eoban Bender, who should be able to unmute.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm Eoban Binder. I would like to urge the council to please vote no on this amendment. I really don't think it's being introduced in good faith here. And I think I can demonstrate very clearly why. So first, if it were being introduced in good faith, it would have been introduced a while ago. It would have been introduced first instead of trying to ban duplexes completely. But that's not what happened. Instead, the sponsors attempted to ban duplexes completely, and now they're falling back to the next best thing, which is to try and kill duplexes by 1,000 cuts. You know, they're technically allowed, but keep piling on as many restrictions as possible. It kind of reminds me of the ADU situation. A couple of years ago, the bill's sponsors used to be against ADUs, but now they're the tool of choice. The second is, if this really were, and I think Council Member Flaherty alluded to this idea earlier, but if this were actually a good way to create affordable housing, then the amendment would have also included single-family homes as well as duplexes in its 2-bedroom restriction. Councilmember Sandberg tries to claim that somehow duplexes are different from single-family homes here, that a 2-bedroom restriction makes sense for one housing type but not the other. But she doesn't explain this. If this is such a good idea, then the amendment sponsors need to explain in detail why it makes sense to apply this restriction to duplexes but not to single-family homes. I mean, they're similar in scale, similar types of people live in them. Duplexes and single-family homes will coexist in the same neighborhoods. So what is the difference? Why does it make sense for the 2-bedroom restriction on duplexes, but not for single-family homes? What is the difference? The fact of the matter is there is no difference. There's no logic to this amendment, so please vote no. Finally, I would urge council to consider future affordability incentives that do apply both to single-family homes and duplexes. I think there are affordability incentives that we can use, but this is not one of them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have Greg Alexander, who should be able to unmute.
Hello, Mr. Alexander, you have 3 minutes.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, I'm Greg Alexander. I ask you to oppose Amendment 4. I respect that this amendment is patterned after what I consider to be a successful program incentivizing affordable units in larger multifamily developments. One of the reasons it works so well for larger developments is that they are only required to have 15% or 7.5% of their units be affordable to get the incentive. So most of their units are still lucrative market rate units. But these new rules for duplexes require either 100% or 50% of their units to be affordable. This isn't going to work while duplex development is competing with luxury single-family housing. The great thing about duplex housing is that it allows developers to make a profit on market rate housing while also incentivizing them to house people. The trouble with single-family housing when prices are growing so quickly is that it incentivizes developers to leave lots vacant while they hold out for the highest price. Yes, developers are making money either way. This way, they are housing people. The profit a developer can make from a modest remodel of a single-family house is not interesting to them. It is irrelevant compared to the enormous profit they can make from remodeling it fully into a luxury house. And that is what they are choosing to do all around us. But a duplex incentivizes even a modest remodel. If they can collect rent on 2 units, they can profit even if each of those units is too small to be considered luxury. Without that incentive, the modest remodel is going the way of the dodo. Duplexes make for relatively low market rate rents. That's the magic of duplexes. Let's not screw that up. As long as single-family housing is allowed to accrue market rate profits, Amendment 4 will just discourage any developer from doing anything other than the kind of luxury single-family remodel that we've seen so much of lately. This amendment only makes sense if you believe that detached single-family housing is morally superior. It isn't. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Richard Lewis, who should be able to unmute.
Good evening, President Sims and members of council. Thank you for allowing us to have the time to speak tonight. And thank you to council members Sandberg and Rollo for bringing forward this amendment number 4, which I do support. A couple of comments. I think Trinitas does present the perfect example of what the lack of oversight in voluntary incentives can achieve, which is 0. And as council members Rollo and Sandberg point out, with these affordable level duplexes, we at least have the opportunity to produce more than zero. And I think that should be applauded. I would also like to point out that very early on, if I am not mistaken, the mayor's comments emphasized in great detail about affordability in introducing plexes into the core neighborhoods, and planning staff echoed that. It was, as Councilmember Sandberg said, once higher discussion came out about the lack of affordability in these potential duplexes because of lack of owner occupancy requirements and the fact that they would be built at market rates with no incentives, that it became clear that affordability was not really a viable topic. And that became then affordability as a term was taken off the table by the administration and by planning. But the rest of us are still talking about affordability, and I think that is important. In our neighborhood of Prospect Hill, sorry, my name is Richard Lewis, I probably forgot to say that earlier. In our neighborhood of Prospect Hill, most of the houses around us are single story, old Queen Anne cottages or early craftsman bungalows. Our house has only 2 bedrooms in it. If we were to convert to a duplex, chances are we could squeeze another bedroom out of some other space, and it would still be an affordable duplex on one side, as well as having 1 or 2 bedrooms on our own side. So I think this could actually incentivize homeowners to create modest duplexes out of their existing homes, so that we are still encouraging home ownership and yet also increasing options for renters and for others in the community. We do have a long-term stable rental market here. It's not just student rentals, which tend to gravitate toward the market rates. My husband was a longtime renter in this town before we were able to buy a house in our mid-40s. He rented for nearly 30 years. And he is one of those that is looking for affordable rental opportunities in the core neighborhoods, close to downtown, that's walkable for him. So I would suggest that this actually fulfills several goals. And since planning staff started saying once the affordability talk was dropped on the part of the administration, that duplexes were just one of the tools in our toolbox, I would agree. And now they could become an affordable tool in our toolbox. And if I have 30 seconds left, I will say I'm getting tired of people impugning motives. The Proplex people continually assault folks who have their reservations. And once we start talking about affordability, they say, well, if they really cared about affordability, they would sell their property and make it community property, or they don't care enough and have come to this time. I'm out of time.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy? But before we do that, I'd like to remind the public that these are public comments on amendment number 4 of ordinance 21-23. And I would also ask everyone to please identify yourself when you've been recognized to speak. Thank you. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
The person with the screen name, Sarah Cahalane.
Hi, yeah, my name is Sarah Cahalane. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thanks for the planning department for pointing out that covenants on affordable housing is not appealing. As a person who used programs for affordable housing, it was something that I tried to avoid because I couldn't buy a house that for 15 years I couldn't sell after. So it hit me the other day when I was thinking about the language used by so many of our neighbors and council members when discussing this issue. The classism is astonishing, but then I realized that we as a community have been living with a poverty rate of 37 to 40% for children under 5 for at a minimum for the last 7 years. A community who doesn't sound the alarm bells at this astonishing rate of poverty for our youngest members has a serious problem. And that problem is classism. This classism is playing itself out in full view now. But will it even matter when half of the community refuses to see what is right in front of them, refuses to see the evidence of this reality? What are we really saying when big developers are going, when we say big developers are going to destroy our neighborhoods? The big developers are not going to be living there themselves. So who will be living there? Obviously in this community, it will be the students along with other renters. Who are these renters? They are students. They are the students that pay the salaries of more than, I imagine, half of the people at any city council meeting. They are also local professionals who run our nonprofits, who are staff members at IU, work at our libraries, serve our coffee, bag our groceries, put out our fires, teach our children, and everything else that is good about this community. So is this what we are saying? We do not wish to intermingle with the students that make Bloomington different from every small town in Southern Indiana, the students that pay the salaries of the homeowners in our core neighborhoods, the person who serves you dinner at your local restaurant. Maybe you're thinking, I would like to live next to all of these community members. You're thinking of the other kind, the kind that leave needles in the neighborhood, the kind who leave cups in their yard, the kind who make a lot of noise. Well, guess what? These are the same people, the same students, the same nonprofit professionals, the same firefighters, the same baristas, the same grocery store employees, the same renters. So maybe take a minute to think about who is going to be living next to you and who you are claiming is going to destroy your neighborhood, because it will never be the big developer and it will always be a person who makes Bloomington special and unique. Please vote no on Amendment 4. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do you have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have Dave Warren, who should be able to unmute.
Good evening. My name is Dave Warren. I comment tonight. Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Hi. I comment tonight asking that council please vote against Amendment 4 for several reasons, all of which relate to the fact that while this is well-intentioned, it adds yet another layer of complexity that will likely just lead to fewer homes being added at a time when more homes are so necessary. Last week, City Council already capped the number of duplexes that can be added to just 15 a year and approved a 2-year 150-foot buffer on top of the additional processes added to conditional duplex approval and the existing standards and procedures required of all development under the UDO. Amendment 4 would further reduce the likelihood that duplexes are added by capping allowed rooms per side to 2, a requirement that does not exist for detached single-family homes, which are easily the most expensive type of home to own or rent and can have as many bedrooms as the dimensional standards of the UDO allows. I think most reasonable people would agree that it's unfair that someone can build a 6,000 square foot detached single-family home with 5 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms by right, without any affordability requirement. But someone who wants to convert their home into a duplex has to go through a lot of hoops and then can still only have 2 bedrooms aside. That home, by the way, that 5 bedroom, 6 bath home, it's in the Somax neighborhood. It was listed at $1.2 million and sold in mid-March for $1.7 million. Again, we allow these homes, those homes and many other single family supersized flips by right, but not more naturally affordable housing types, despite being in the middle of a severe housing affordability crisis. There is no free lunch when it comes to affordable housing, and there are much better ways to promote affordable housing than this well-intentioned but ineffective amendment. The most unaffordable home is the home that's never built, as a scarcity of homes drives the prices and rents of existing homes up. Homes that don't exist also cannot be subsidized using down payment assistance programs, direct rental subsidies, or existing rental subsidies like Section 8 housing choice vouchers. It's also important to note that while I agree with those saying we should use more public money for programs like rental subsidies and missing middle housing down payment assistance, those actions have to be balanced by increases in the supply of homes across market segments. Otherwise, that demand side assistance will just continue putting upward pressure on home prices and rents. And subsidies also require tax revenue that Bloomington continues to leave on the table by making it difficult for people to live here and bring their local income tax revenues with them. Again, there is no free lunch. We need more homes, period. And this amendment doesn't help that. It actually discourages it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have the person with the screen name Jess, who should be able to unmute and state their full name.
Hi, my name's Jessica Griffin. I'd like to ask council to vote no on this amendment. It doesn't really seem to be so much about affordability so much as it is about just further restricting, further putting restrictions on duplexes by limiting the number of bedrooms. I don't think the outcomes are really going to be what we expect or what we would hope for with this. I'd also like to point out that at least in quite a lot of lots in the core neighborhoods, walkable neighborhoods, the lots are probably small enough anyway that you may not put more than 2 bedrooms on each side of a duplex. And so then we are still ending up with not having affordable units in these areas that are in high demand. So hope that council can vote no and then consider some other affordable options in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next?
Next, we have Kathy Crabtree, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, I'm Kathy Crabtree. I live in the near west side. Based on public comments to date, everyone on this call cares about our neighborhoods. We just have different visions as to the best way to accomplish our goals, as well as the timing of our goals. I'm grateful that it appears conditional duplexes will be approved for Bloomington. I think that's a win for our future. Duplexes offer an important measure to add more housing diversity to Bloomington's neighborhoods. To address the concerns that some members of the public have expressed about the impact of duplexes in their neighborhoods, City Council has already adopted Amendment 3, which caps the number of duplexes annually and adds a buffer with the minimum space between duplexes. Amendment 4 would reduce the number of bedrooms allowed in a duplex from 3 bedrooms per unit to 2 bedrooms per unit. While I'm sure the incentives for a 3rd bedroom are well-intentioned, they are misguided on several fronts, but I'll speak to 2: financial viability and administrative burden of compliance. This amendment is not financially viable. It costs more to build a 3rd bedroom, but with the income targets, the unit would likely have to rent or sell at the same or possibly lower price than a 2-bedroom unit. This amendment is unnecessarily complicated. Compliance would need to be managed by a city entity, possibly the city's current workforce housing program or the HAND department. As written, this amendment would increase the workload for whichever department compliance management is placed under. I would encourage folks who care about affordability to ask existing landlords, some of which who are on this call, to accept vouchers, as hundreds of tenants in Bloomington every year have to forfeit their vouchers because they can't find a rental unit that accepts vouchers as a source of payment. I ask City Council members to vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Crabtree. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have Janice Sorby, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, my name is Jan Sorby, and I hope you will support Amendment 4. One reoccurring message that we've heard over and over again in all of these hearings, both 2019 and this year, is the need and the expectation that the plexes will be affordable. This affordable housing amendment is the opportunity to at least provide a possibility for that to happen. When the duplex decision was heard in 2019, Councilmember Piedmont Smith proposed an amendment to limit the number of bedrooms in duplexes from 3 per unit to 2 per unit in the existing residential neighborhoods. A few of the comp plan goals that were cited then are to encourage a wide range of housing types to provide a more diverse mix of housing opportunities and household income levels, preferably within neighborhoods and multifamily housing developments. Continue to support and promote affordable housing ownership as another method of permanent affordability that can help to raise and keep residents from poverty while they build equity and security in the local community. I still believe that home ownership must be considered in the affordability toolbox. In the spirit of that amendment, I sincerely hope council members will support this affordable housing amendment. The 2020 housing study identifies a serious need for workforce housing. Workforce housing is comprised of middle-income workers who do some of the most important work in our society, such as teachers, firefighters, healthcare workers. Workforce households may not qualify for household subsidies like voucher programs or any other assistance programs, actually. But their challenges to make ends meet still are there. This might describe your kids who are working at a job that doesn't pay what they thought it would pay, or maybe they are working more than one job. Maybe they make very little money but are trying to save for a down payment on a house. Additionally, many people who work in the not-for-profit groups retire with very deficient retirement benefits in America. This may be you I'm talking about. Regardless of the situation, there are millions of reasons for giving a helping hand to workforce residents. I urge you to vote for this amendment. I hope we can deliver affordable housing to all the people we have heard from, and maybe this amendment can serve, sincerely, I believe this, as a start in healing for our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. What do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have the person with the screen name Peter, who should be able to unmute and state their full name.
Yes, hi, it's Peter Dorfman from the Near West Side. Once again, we're having a conversation that everyone believes is about housing, but it isn't. This is a conversation about real estate. And the real estate reality is, and when I say the real estate reality, I read the trade press of the real estate industry fairly constantly. And they announce every day their intentions. And I can tell you from that perspective, the idea that duplexes represent a homeownership opportunity in Bloomington is a pipe dream. Nobody in the real estate industry, at least in its mainstream, is going to be coming to Bloomington to build duplexes for sale as owner-occupied units. This is all about rentals. And I think when we talk about the rental affordability in Bloomington, every time we have one of these discussions and we try to nail down what the intention actually is, the planning staff and the plan commission and many of the people on this council squirm away to a corner when you try to pin them down as to whether we're really talking about affordability. If we're not talking about affordability, what are we talking about? I keep hearing that this is all about increased housing options. I defy anybody to explain how increased housing options is any kind of inherent good unless you resort to an argument based on affordability. If this council is serious about affordability, and I think that's what we want to hear because that's what people in Bloomington actually care about, you should be supporting Amendment 4. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. What do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have the person with the screen name Ed Bernstein, who should be able to unmute and state their full name.
Hi, my name's Ed Bernstein. I live in Elm Heights. I'm very confused as to whether this ongoing debate is about affordability or not. At the outset of these many meetings, both with the Plan Commission and now the council, affordability has been on and off the table. At the beginning of all this, months ago, Ms. Scanlon was, I believe, including this as an important reason for upzoning. Later on, when it became obvious that with by right and then conditional plexes in the core, we would just have developers and landlords still taking over, or even if by some remote chance not the case, rents would still be what the market would bear. Now with Amendment 4, we are finally discussing real ways of obtaining affordability and inclusiveness without violating Indiana state law. This would be just a beginning. Other suggestions made, for example, by Kerry Thompson, draft comprehensive implementation for a city's housing study from 2020. It also included the Village Center plan proposed by Barry Clapper and Jim Rosenbacher. Use a down payment assistance fund from Housing Development Fund. Cite new higher density developments to fit our growing population. Promote ADUs throughout the city. I wholeheartedly support Amendment 4 as a real way of creating all the things that this community wants: inclusivity, equity, and affordability, while in some small way protecting the core from unbridled upzoning with no controls. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Again, I'd like to remind the public that we are speaking now on Amendment 4 of Ordinance 21-23. Please identify yourself when you've been recognized to speak. If you wish to indicate your intent to speak, you can use the raise hand function in Zoom, or you can send our meeting host a note through via chat to indicate that you wish to speak in public. Okay, thank you, Ms. Lacey. Who else do we have?
Next we have Wendy Bernstein, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, basically, I would like to echo what my husband just said. I support Amendment 4. I particularly support Council people Sandberg and Rollo in their very big-hearted, inclusive intentions with this amendment. They are trying to provide affordability, which I believe is the underlying reason to expand housing options. And I don't know if some of this amendment could handle some tweaking to allow for more home equity on the part of owners of duplexes, but I would absolutely in no way reject it because of some potential tweaking of it. Its intentions are exceptionally good, and it tries to overcome what I see as way too much hypocrisy on the part of people in the planning commission, department, and administration. I truly believe that the city should put its money where its mouth is. And the fact that we have an affordable housing fund and all this money coming into Bloomington from the federal government, that we have got to think of good ways to supplement people's buying power or renting power. And it is essential that we use the money that the city has professed to be able to use. And so far, I don't really know where that money has gone. And what frustrates me the absolute most is that when I hear administrators of the city talk about the possibilities for the hospital site or the Trinitas development, that the monies and the affordability are not required of these developments. They said that what the market will bear will determine what gets built. And that is not good enough for the professed goals of this administration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have Patrick Murray, who should, excuse me. Who should be able to unmute.
Hello, my name is Patrick Murray. I would ask you to please vote for Amendment 4. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're
Very
a little
good.
low. If you could speak louder,
Yeah,
maybe,
I
or
will.
turn up your
I
volume.
will
Okay,
shout
thank
into my
you.
microphone.
Thank you.
I would urge you to please vote for Amendment 4. Supply and demand really doesn't work with the housing market in Bloomington. For as long as I've lived here, which is 29 years, when I came here, I was astonished at the housing prices. This has been a long-term issue in Bloomington and hasn't really been dealt with. Bloomington has a housing affordability crisis, and it's well known, even statewide, as one of the most expensive places to live in the state. I don't think that's something that we should be proud of. A bit of personal experience. I ran a small department at IU for a number of years. I am retired now, so I'm not in charge of that. But when I did, I had a small staff. They were all middle-level clerical staff. 2 of my staff lived out of the county because they couldn't afford to pay Bloomington rent. Another staff member lived at the city fringes because that's what was affordable to him and his family. I truly believe that we have more of an affordability crisis here than not. And then lastly, I've sat on the Bloomington Housing Authority Board for 2 terms. And one of the things that came home to me there is how difficult it is for families, even with housing vouchers, to find something that they can afford to live in. I truly believe that this is Amendment 4 is just a small piece of the bigger solution, but it is a piece of the solution. And I would urge you to vote for Amendment 4. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Murray. What do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have a person with the screen name Tim and Jenny, and it's not clear to me whether it's 1 or 2 people who will speak. They should be able to unmute.
Hello, Council. This is Jenny Southern. I'm the one that will be speaking. I thought I should go forward and support Amendment 4. Why I support Amendment 4 is because it kind of represents my house. I live in a duplex. I live in the core neighborhood. So I'm a very good example of what it can or can't do. We rent an apartment in our basement. It is a legal duplex. They actually even have different house numbers. We actually removed one of our basement bedrooms because we found it easier to handle lesser students. The important part of what I wanted to say is this. To say that we make a profit off the apartment is probably never going to be true. What it does do is it helps us pay our taxes, which I will say is going higher this year again, and it's already up at $5,000. It also helps us pay insurance for our home. So if people are thinking that even with a duplex, that they're going to make a lot of cash and be homeowners on the other side, this is not true. It can help you out, but it's not going to be your only business. It's not going to make you a profit. Now, if you talk about 2 families living in my home and owning this, right now, I believe that's impossible. I don't think I could sell my basement. I don't think I could sell the other side of my house if it was split down in the middle. You can't do that legally in Bloomington in the neighborhoods. It's called subdividing, and you can't subdivide your lot. Now, if other people have thought of this already and found a cure for that, I might have missed that. But I like the dream of 2 homeowners living on 2 sides of the duplex, but I can tell you that that's pie in the sky unless it's addressed that you can legally subdivide. Otherwise, no one will ever be able to sell their half. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and I encourage the council to keep looking for more affordable housing options. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have 2 individuals using Pam Weaver's screen name. They should be able to unmute and state their name for the record.
Hi, this is Pam Weaver. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sweet. Okay. So the first thing I want to just say is to vote no to this Amendment 4. And also I want to reinforce what the staff has already said. I was going to say a lot of the stuff they said, so thank you for saying it even much better. I also want to address this affordability word. Affordability, I mean, semantically, it's important because we do have shortened it to affordability, the thought, but it's really about reducing the cost of housing overall by generating enough housing in Bloomington. So it's not about creating affordable houses in specific neighborhoods. It's affordability overall. And I just, while you guys were all sharing your information, I did some quick research and numbers, and I got a lot of numbers in front of me, so hopefully I can sort this out. But I want to clarify what we mean here by affordability. So what the incentive is for, and I kind of helped write these incentives because I was on the Sustainability Commission at the time. The incentive is 80% of median income. So now the last time, not 80% of poverty, not 100% and 20% of poverty, but of median income in Bloomington. So the last time I looked at that, which I admit is now about a year and a half ago, the median income in Bloomington for 4 people was $55,000. And so when you talk about 80% of that, that means we're talking about housing for a household now that has a median income of $44,000 because that's 80% of the $55,000. So first of all, I just wanted to clarify that, which is not the same as Section 8, because Section 8 is a lower threshold, and frankly, I don't have that information in front of me, but it's lower than that. So the incentives that Sandberg and Rollo are talking about are the affordability that I just mentioned, which is 80% of 55,000 for a 4-person. So let's say, and then I wanted to talk about the ADU issue in that regard, because an ADU can't be more than 840 square feet, and it can't be more than 2 bedrooms. So if you do some quick math, to build an ADU onto your house right now at $175 per square foot, which is the going square foot, that ends up costing you $147,000.
I'm sorry, Ms. Weaver, you exhausted your time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
I'm
was
sorry.
looking at my, go ahead. Okay, other
Thank you.
person?
Is there a second person? Yes,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Go ahead.
You'll have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. My name is Dave Weaver. Yeah, from listening to the amendment and thinking about what it has in it, it comes across really as lazy as it is disingenuous. It seems to be a naked attempt to thwart the will of the majority of Bloomingtonians to increase density in Bloomington. And I urge the council to vote no on Amendment 4.
Okay,
To finish
thank you.
a little bit of what Pam was saying, to build on what Pam was saying, the whole notion of building more affordable housing, in my mind, has more to do with who might be able to afford something. And so, again, if you build a house, a 2,500 square foot structure, that could cost you 400 grand, and one family might be able to afford a $400,000 house. But if you talk about teachers and firefighters and staff members, et cetera, that's probably out of reach. But the same structure with the same square footage in 2 pieces in a duplex, each half would be roughly $200,000. And that is well within the reach of a firefighter or a teacher or a couple of young professors, et cetera. So to me, the duplex is a great solution to the home ownership issues, to density issues, and I am a big fan, but definitely vote no on Amendment 4. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have Chris Sturbaum, who has asked me to share a screen, and Mr. Sturbaum should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I'll start as soon as I see the stuff up on the screen, please.
Is this the beginning, Mr. Sturbaum?
Yes, let's just get to the picture. What the picture shows is really how Chris Sturbaum, what the picture shows is how duplexing really happens and how upzoning really happens in Bloomington. You can't build new, that's not gonna happen. You're not gonna add giant additions on the side. You'll just add to what you've got. And this is an example in Green Acres, and this is what we can expect to see in our community. Please, next picture. These are prices of 5 bedrooms that got upzoned in the last time. This one goes for $46,000, $44,600 a month. Next picture. This is a little simple gabled L for $4,700 a month. Next picture. Here's one for $5,750 a month. Next picture, please. Then I thought, let's think about what $5,000 a month actually buys. Now you can go through these pretty fast. Here's an apartment in New York that you can get for $5,000 a month. Really nice. Keep going, please. 636 square foot. Here's a nice condo in Miami Beach for about $5,000. Let's go on, please. Here's a nice one with a beautiful edge pool. Let's see, where are we? Keep going, please. That's in Denver. That's what $5,000 a month buys in Denver. Keep going, please. There are about 10 of these. $5,000 a month. Another nice thing with a view in Seattle. This is what the real estate turns into. Here's a Texas one. Keep going. So what you're doing, what happens when we upzone, we change a house that could be purchased by a homeowner into real estate that is very, very profitable. And let's be honest, social equity and affordability have been held out as a promise from the beginning of this upzoning back in 2019. Could we just leave it on one of these pictures, please? 2019, people were yelling, affordable, affordable. And we've heard citizens' tearful testimony that they still believe this is going to be affordable. You know, it's not about affordability anymore. Now it's for the purpose to add more housing types option. That's the truth of the matter, and that is what planning is saying. No affordability. Let's tell the truth. And you know, when you upzone, you create a value. When you create a value, you should get something back for the community. Otherwise, it's like foolishly selling the milk cow for a handful of beans. We should ask for affordability for this increase in value that we are giving to owners. And let's face it, this is about rentals. The whole business about an ownership of these it's the unicorn. There will be so few of these owned. So let's get real. And I've got to say, this home ownership, maybe you guys believed it, but it was a lie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a person with the screen named Carrie who should be able to unmute themselves.
I'm sorry, if I can go, not right now, but
hello,
next.
you have three. Pardon?
I'm about to be interrupted and I need to go in a couple minutes. Can you call on me after the next person, please?
Thank you. Who do we have next? Ms. Lacy.
Next, we have Margaret Clements, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for everything that you're doing and everything you're trying to do. And I think by now you know me, that I'm kind of a disambiguator, and I look at numbers and I try to get through kind of the talk and the hoopla that surrounds all these issues. And in some of the data that I've been disambiguating, I've just realized today that 594 of the taxable properties, or supposedly taxable properties, in the city of Bloomington are owned by the Indiana University Board of Trustees. So when we're talking about affordability, and with them being the biggest employer in the city, I think they employ something like 10,000 employees, and with a shrinking number of the homes in the city of Bloomington actually being taxable, I think the city could do well to kind of encourage the university to either provide affordable housing to some of its employees in those 594 homes surrounding the university, or that they could be encouraged to sell so that a young family or a older family could buy something and contribute to the tax base. I know that people on the city council have regular communications with people at the university. Some people actually work there, and the mayor's in regular communication with the university. But we have quite a bit of university sprawl. And in lieu of like a lot of the discussions, I think we really need to look this straight in the eye and say, if we want to increase the property tax base, perhaps the university either needs to give up some of its property holdings so that contributing taxpayers could live there, or perhaps it's time to have a healthy discussion about the university becoming its own municipality. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have a person with a screen name, John Lawrence, who also has asked me to screen share. Mr. Lawrence should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Likewise, I'll wait until you can pop up my document. Thank you, Ms. Lacy.
Thank you. You're on.
Thank you. So again, the name is John Lawrence. I'm from Bryant Park. Wanted to address the idea that creating a duplex in a neighborhood is not affordable using these this Amendment 4. And by the way, I totally support Amendment 4. And I thought I'd go through this pro forma. Months ago, when duplexes came up, my wife and I started looking at the house, our house that we live in Bryant Park, and saying, well, could we make this a duplex? Not that we wanted to make it a duplex, but if we could do our house, someone else could, because we live in a fairly standard sized house. So we started in our minds drawing walls, where would a kitchen go, where would another bathroom go, and it was fairly easy. And so we talked to some architect friends, and we came up with a financial pro forma of what it would cost. And here on the screen is sort of what we came up with, which I think is something that a typical person in a neighborhood could do. So if you look at the scope of the work, we figured that it would cost us about $45,000 to convert our house into a duplex, and just go down the line. Excuse me, and this is also by hiring people to do this. My wife and I can be crazy and do the work ourselves and cut this in half. But using contractors, we figured that it would cost about $2,000 to add a dividing wall, $5,000 to convert studio space, $10,000 to add a bedroom and egress in the basement, another $8,000 for a kitchen, and $10,000 to convert our back porch to a bedroom. And then, because we want electrical service, another $10,000. The operating expense, so that's $45,000. The operating expense will be about, our taxes would double, would be $5,000. We figure maintenance of about $4,000 a year, working on a 1% idea of our value of our house. And a loan payment would be about a little over $5,000, coming up to a little over $14,000. So using the two affordable scenarios in the amendment, the first one is amendment scenario 1 is one market rate unit with 3 bedrooms and another 80% HUD AMI. Based on $750 a bedroom, you've got $27,000 a year for the market rate unit and $18,000 for the 80% HUD AMI, coming up with a net annual income of $30,900 a year. If you do scenario 2 with 220% HUD AMI units, each charging $2,200 a month based on HUD scenarios, you're creating $26,400 per unit, or that's $52,000 per year for a net annual income of $38,000. I mean, we've only borrowed $45,000 to do this. If you do these scenarios, you could pay off your loan if you wanted to in like a year and a half. But most people won't do that, so they're actually bringing in profit of between $30,000 and $40,000. So when we've heard people say that this is a disincentive to people because they can't make money, I just want to say, I just showed you that you can make a lot of money using this affordability option. So I hope that tells you something.
Thank you. You've exhausted your time. Thank you very much for your comment.
Next, we have a person with the screen name Carrie who should be able to unmute themselves and state their full name.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Thompson. This affordability amendment is a solution derived after I was asked by a council member to draft conditions to drive affordability. That is nearly impossible to do legally in Indiana. However, within the structure of the UDO, there are incentives which can be used. And this is how this amendment came to be the win-win that it is. Bloomington is a city where rental housing costs by far exceed that of homeownership. We seem to agree that we have a housing affordability problem. It's hard to find a place to live in Bloomington and harder still to afford it if you are middle to low income. This amendment addresses that issue by incentivizing development to increase density for workforce housing. Let's acknowledge that this amendment is a mitigation step, an invitation to populations currently priced out of our core neighborhoods to live in the heart of our city, a welcome mat for those who feel excluded. It is not an answer in and of itself, but it will develop some inclusion in our city's core. I urge you to support this affordability amendment. The next step after this amendment is to appoint a task force to create an implementation plan for the city's 2020 housing analysis, which identifies and incentivizes the developments in our city that our city needs to house the hundreds of people trying to live in Bloomington. People who do or would like to work at places like Cook, Catalent, the hospital, and yes, in our school systems and grocery stores. We can't house everyone downtown, but we can make this step to extend an invitation and to step into our shared value of welcoming all people to this community. I'd like to address a few questions that have arisen in tonight's meeting. First, HAND already does monitor owner-occupied affordability. I know this because I was the signator and accountable party for those for 20 years. Second, these restrictions do not restrict sales or rental prices, and a developer can easily secure very close to market rate on these rentals. I would agree that there are challenges to permanent affordability in low-income properties, however, for homeownership. However, these are workforce-targeted properties at a higher income level and would be less restricted. Next, I'd like to correct the analysis of an elderly couple in a 3-bedroom home that wants to divide it. That would be allowable in a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom duplex. Finally, these units will make a profit. $2,200 is a healthy rent, and it will rise with the wages in Bloomington. The reason that this is a solution is that it will not rise faster than our wages. It will rise only with our wages. We'll be assured that we are building some housing stock that meets our workforce needs. I urge you to support this affordability amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have Barbara Moss, who should be able to unmute.
Okay. The mayor has repeatedly called this upzoning a way to address affordability. He did this in his Ask the Mayor column and all of his press releases. However, when it was shown this argument could not be supported, it conveniently shifted to the need for density to eventually create more affordable housing through a trickle-down mechanism. And we all know trickle-down theories rarely work. Think Reaganomics. It works for the elite. It doesn't trickle down, it tends to trickle up. This type of affordability incentive program being proposed by Amendment 4, which I support, has worked in Bloomington. This can be a move towards affordable workforce housing in the core neighborhoods. Maybe it will actually help keep some of the workforce folks in Bloomington. What would actually create more opportunity for workforce folks, therefore not to escape to Greene County and other places, as Patrick Murray described before? What would do that is to keep the core neighborhoods as they are with the preferred type of single-family housing, which no matter what has been said is absolutely the preference of most people. But that's kind of water under the bridge. It's too bad the council and administration have now removed them from our precious and limited affordable single housing stock, but it's done. But this amendment can at least start to work to leverage getting more affordable housing into our core neighborhoods. As the sponsors say, it is but one tool, but we should embrace it. As the duplex owner, who just spoke a few speakers back, told us through her experience as an owner of one of these units, they will not enable home ownership. And I think that was also pointed out by some other people, like Chris Sturbaum, really what happens when we upzone. And it's kind of strange that out of the blue now we had home ownership being voiced as a real concern by planning tonight. But be that as it may, we all know that ship has sailed. These will not be owned; they will be rented. So we're really talking about rentals and a way to make them more affordable. And so therefore, I would just like to encourage you all to please support this amendment and vote for Amendment 4. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Before we go to our next person, I do just want to remind the public that you can use the raised hand function in Zoom to indicate that you want to speak publicly, or you may send a message through the chat function to our meeting host if your intent, or to let her know your intent is to speak publicly. We also have 3 minutes. So who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have Joe Lee, who should be able to unmute.
Hello, I'm here again. Anyway, I have to say, my head is spinning like Linda Blair's, because it's affordable and it's not affordable, affordability and not affordability. And now we hear what is, I think, the actual truth of the upzoning is that the only way to get affordability is to increase density. But how much density do you increase? How many houses is that? How many buildings in neighborhoods do you have to get before it becomes affordable? You know, we've been told that this is an experiment. This is an experiment. Why not try Amendment 4 to see how it works? We've been told by the mayor that there is a 3-ring binder, his proverbial 3-ring binder, that a page can come out and a page can go in. It's time to put this page in. So please vote for Amendment 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next we have Orion Day, who should be able to unmute.
Thank you. Hello, I am Orion Day, and I've spoken before at these council meetings about plexes as someone who is currently officially homeless. I had a full-time professional staff position with the university where I could barely afford rent and utilities in this city, and was in a large apartment complex that is old. It was built many decades ago and is in dire need of renovations. When that is the only option that is available to me as a single person, where I don't have friends who could have a roommate, really what is facing me is either moving away or finding random roommates. So that's sort of the state of housing options that I faced last summer, also in the middle of a pandemic. I elected to put all of my things in storage and go on a trip because I had never been to the West before. So one can say I had a benefit from being homeless while I still had a job. When I returned to Bloomington, of course, nothing had changed over 4 months, because this is a very long process, not just for debating this, but for having more options. Plexes are not something that's going to make housing affordable overnight. This is going to be years of work to increase the housing stock available in Bloomington. It is not going to benefit me in any near term. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm looking to move elsewhere. So there is something of a brain drain in Bloomington for that reason, that there are a lot of very talented people that I have gotten to know over my 10 years here who have had to move away for this very reason. And so having more housing options is the next obvious step, and it's filling in this missing middle that we don't currently have. Right now we have single family homes, large apartment buildings and complexes with nothing in the middle. that next step in development is something that will expand our options. It's not going to immediately make things more affordable. And in fact, we're going to see housing prices continue to go up because that's just what they do anyway, but perhaps they might go up a little more slowly. But any attempt to add on more and more restrictions is only hampering this next direction that Bloomington must go in to reverse decades and decades of restrictive development requirements that favored single family homes or large apartment complexes on the edge of town, which has led to entirely unsustainable forms of development. So I would urge you to reject Amendment 4 as yet another restriction that tries to hamper this development stage.
Thank you for your comments. Your time's been exhausted. Thank you.
Next, we have the person with the screen name Vinley, who should be able to unmute and state their name.
Hello, this is Wendy Brisht from Elm Heights. First thing I'm going to do, so I don't run out of time, is I would like to address Mr. Sims. When I say that rental costs don't go down with more rental housing supply, this is something I learned during the years I was living in California. This has never worked, and they never have. On the contrary, did rents go down when thousands of homes were dumped on the market after the 2008 crash and home prices were cut by half or more and houses were sitting empty? No, they didn't. They went up all over the country because when investors bought up the homes, they removed the competition of cheaper mortgages and they raised the rents. The more housing they own and control, the higher the rents go, and the higher the rents go, the higher the housing prices go. The tail wags the dog. There is an epic influx of rental investors all over the country building to rent. A mortgage on a single family home is still the cheapest housing in Bloomington, with the exception of small rental apartments. Duplex rental bedrooms are every bit as expensive in Elm Heights as single family home rental bedrooms. It makes no difference. And they're all inhabited by students because they're so expensive. I don't understand why council members say they want more expensive rental housing. We have plenty of expensive rental housing. We have rental housing that's not renting now because it's too expensive. There are 3-bedroom multiplexes renting for $1,500 down on the south side of town, and they can't rent them. They say that market forces should be able to dictate development, but Mr. Sturbaum showed you the results of that in my neighborhood. To expect any of this to be affordable without Amendment 4 is not right, and to expect it to at some point make housing costs go down is also, it's not logical. Duplexes, I just want to say this, they were never meant to be put into single family neighborhoods. They were supposed to go on the outskirts between the neighborhoods and the developments. And I'm just wondering, why is this being pushed so fast and so hard? Why? Is it what many of us think it is? Is it a profit motive for the city? Is it people's ambitions? I think this needs, if this doesn't have Amendment 4, why are we doing it? That's my question. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacey?
Next, we have Barry Clapper, who should be able to unmute.
Hi, my name is Barry Clapper. Good evening. I am asking you to support Amendment number 4 this evening. I think that this amendment represents an incredible opportunity. It is not a restriction. This amendment provides a real incentive for a real level of affordability that we currently do not have in the core neighborhoods, or that we have very little of. I, along with all of you, have listened to hours and hours of public testimony over these last few weeks, and I have been struck almost to a person that about the public concern and interest to increase housing opportunities to serve middle and lower markets. This has been a unifying theme almost to a person, and this amendment provides an answer. Density has real value. Rentals in core neighborhoods currently are money-making machines. That's the way it is. And I was recently made aware that one rental company in Elm Heights alone owns almost over 45 properties. It represents a tremendous number of properties in one neighborhood alone. So there is tremendous market pressure to acquire these properties for rental use. Remember that nearly half of the housing stock in the core areas are already rentals. And by allowing more density through duplexes, development rights are effectively being doubled. And this density has real value. This amendment attempts to provide a level of affordability aimed at the workforce sector in particular. And it's aiming to provide a balance to create an effective incentive. Okay, we're not 100% sure it's going to work perfectly, but it's a real opportunity to try this because so many other tools are not available to us. So I'm asking you to support this amendment. Right now, I would say 99% of the core neighborhoods are built out. So the only way we're getting new construction is that we're having to tear down existing homes. That is probably not going to happen that often. We're talking mainly about conversions. So please keep that in mind. I just want to turn very quickly to the financial feasibility of duplexes in core neighborhoods that was provided to all the council members today. And just to say that that, of course, was aimed at new construction, which I think is very unlikely that we'll see much of in the core neighborhoods. And it also talked about a 60 to 80% HUD AMI, which is not what this amendment is targeting. It's targeting workforce. And just to say that at 120% of HUD AMI, the allowable rent would be almost $2,300 a month. That is over $250 a bedroom if we're thinking of 3 bedrooms. And that was what was quoted as a reasonable.
I'm sorry, Ms. Clapper, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Betty Rose Nagel, who should be able to unmute.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak. All along, I have been saying that in the core, plexes will be rentals, and that rentals will be market rate unless there are specific requirements put in place to make them affordable. Amendment 4 is the means by which at least some of them can be made affordable. So I do urge you to approve Amendment 4. I've also been saying that I think that if you want there to be affordable housing, you should be building or subsidizing or making affordable housing available, not by somehow trickling up or filtering down or whatever. There were 3 areas that some of us were hoping might be affordable, be built affordable. One was the Kmart site. Well, that turns out not to be the case. The old hospital, it sounds like there will be some affordable housing there. And in today's paper, there was a letter that proposed a way of enabling the Sudbury property to be built affordable. But for now, I will simply say, please support Amendment 4. It so far is the only thing I see that actually will make affordable the properties that you want to duplex and triplex. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And who do we have next? Ms. Lacey.
Next, we have Jamie Scholl, who should be able to unmute.
Hello, my name is Jamie Scholl, and I'm sorry I wasn't as prepared for this meeting today because I had a very late work day. I wanted to point out that I have just this whole thing of being rental or not rental. Do we know how many people we need to provide what types of housing for? And doing a little research today after a conference call and found that Bozeman, Montana has some very interesting things there. They also have a university. They have an entire document that talks about community housing resources and programs. They have a wonderful website as a part of their the city's website. It's a community housing fund. It is a document and ordinance and all these other things that look at the entire city and plans from that perspective, even looking at, you know, some years out and with people retiring, how will they function within that? I'm not aware that our city has anything similar, but it seems like in this type of discussion that having a broader viewpoint of being able to meet all the needs and have them clearly defined and within our community and culture, that we would have a better way to meet what the community needs are because we know what they are. I also have become aware of, I know this isn't exactly relevant here, but with what's going on in planning with the old Kmart site on the east side. And someone had shared with me an article from Ann Arbor where that company Trinitas is actually suing the city council, the city and the city council, because they decided they did not want that student housing that could even be charged by the bed in their city. That looks to be ongoing now. So that's something that if we're going to open the door to all of these rental properties, which is what it looked like from the article that Ann Arbor had been looking at, then we should also consider that as well, because we need to protect some home ownership here, even if it's a condo. Townhomes can be funded through HUD. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I will wish you all a good night.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Shaw. Appreciate it. Do we have anyone else? Ms. Lacy?
We have, it looks like we presently have 3 more raised hands, starting with Jeff Richardson, who should be able to unmute.
Thank you, Ms. Lacy. I am not as expert as many of the speakers who spoke tonight. I'm just in awe, really, on both sides, how much talent we have and how much knowledge we have in this arena. And while I support amendment number 4, I would say whatever happens, I hope that the council can see and appreciate this wealth of talent we have and try to bring together these various people and experts like Carrie Thompson and Jan Sorby and Barry Clapper and John Lawrence and the list goes on, to really address head on this affordability issue. For me, what I found interesting about this amendment, and I did have attended some meetings and listened a lot, mostly, I learned a lot what the possibilities are. And for me, this is about possibilities. What's possible? And I realize that some people think, well, this is not going to work, or maybe we should try another way. But the worst outcome would be is that this amendment fails, and then we say, okay, check the box, we moved on, we discussed this amendment, now we'll have one more amendment tonight, and then let's get this UDO behind us and move on. That would be the worst outcome. There are opportunities that I think should spring from this debate, and especially on this affordability issue. I know there are many people, myself included, that beyond the UDO would like to be actively, formally, officially connected with this affordability issue. So it's a plea to the council to look carefully at the expertise, the passion, and the interest in dealing with this issue front on. And I hope that this amendment passes, but if it doesn't, I hope it will be a catalyst for future engagement, future discussions, and future action on the affordability front. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Ms. Lacy?
Next, we have a person with a screen name Cynthia who should be able to unmute and state their full name.
Hi, this is Cynthia Brettheim. So are you going to stand up for affordability? This has been such a long and contentious process. And you know what the majority of people who have called have asked for. You know what kinds of pains that we've gone to say the same things for how many years now? 3 years through the comp plan, then through the transportation plan. And I'm in favor of this amendment. Affordability might help increase diversity, at least in affordability. When we started arguing about this, it was based on a book that said single family housing is should be eliminated. It's racist. We shouldn't do it. And yet we've got plenty of development that's gone on with great big houses and great big yards. Let's put our heads together and heal from this really nasty process. There's got to be a way. This amendment is one more effort to do that, and it addresses the issue of affordability, which has been brought up again and again. I know there are local developers and realtors who will help. I know that local investors might help, and we have to give them a chance to do that. We know that supply and demand doesn't work for housing, that it's not peaches and those houses are not going to rot. We know that the rents haven't gone down. We know that the sale prices have not gone down because we've built more houses or because there are subdivisions in the county that are more affordable. We know that the core neighborhoods are 3 to 6 times more dense than surrounding areas. And if we keep putting our heads together and actually work together, I think that there could be all kinds of solutions in addition to this amendment 4. As a community, there's got to be a way we can be more respectful all the way around. Let's find out what that is. Let's figure it out. Let's come up with more ideas to house more people. Let's increase diversity. Like I have said 3 times now, on my block, we have 10 rentals and 12 owner occupied, and it's just fine. And I have no idea who's a student and who's not, and who's a worker or a retired person. I have no idea who's a house husband. And it doesn't matter as long as we're given the opportunity to treat each other respectfully. And affordability helps with that. It brings honor to us. It gives us the opportunity to set this up and make it workable. The mechanisms we have for affordability so far have not helped that much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.